coming down. Hello everyone, I'm Angelo, owner and chief engineer at the Mix Palace. We were formerly called the Music Palace, and I'm really proud to introduce, sitting here with me is the iconic Chuck D. He's the founding member of Public Enemy from Long Island, New York. Chuck?
Yep.
Thanks for coming, man.
Yeah, the Angelo is, we know each other, before the great nicknames and all that stuff, we would sign off and he would get the official government name and his government name would receive it.
Michael Bona, right?
Yeah.
So, talk to us a little bit about what brought you originally to the Mix Palace back in 1986.
Yeah, well, 1986 was a time where I didn't necessarily come back to the Mix Palace, but it was Eric Vietnam Sadler was doing a project with, it was before 86, because I think Keith Shockley of Spectrum actually did a project with Eric Vietnam Sadler, his partner, Charles Cassius, and they did the Keymatic records with Eric Matthew.
Oh, you regularly bringing it back.
Yeah, so Eric Matthew actually, recorded at the Music Palace, and that was my first orientation with your studio. And I knew it was close. It was right down the road from my school at Delphi. I was very familiar with this area, but a studio was definitely a change for me going here as opposed to our first forays into the city, which I hated to do the commuting into the city and doing recording later on as Public Enemy just kind of wore me out. Had my car busted in many times in Soho.
I remember that. Your radios were stolen.
Yeah, I mean, I was done with it, but early on, our first forays into your studio was Eric Matthew,
Charles Cassius,
maybe? Charles Cassius.
Wow.
Charles Cassius. Radar was the name of the label.
Yes.
And Keymatic with KG. Keith Shockley was really the first, meeting with you guys. Oh. And I just enjoyed it. That was in a quiet spot. It's in Long Island. Although you guys had a guy that owned the building had the gravel pit truck.
Remember him?
Oh shit! That dude's a part of the music folklore, because if he'd said no recording that particular day, we just had to wait for another day for the session.
Yeah, I remember that.
Yeah, he was a cranky dude most of the time, but he was kind of nice to me.
Yeah, he was cranky. It's funny to say
he was nice to me. Did he have any idea what was going on?
No, not really.
No idea, not a clue, right?
No idea. History was being made. That was my first location. I was in a smaller building than where I am now.
Yep, your partner at the time.
And my partner at the time. I remember the bomb squad would just camp out of there for literally years.
For years, man. It was a very relaxing place for me, as opposed to but I didn't run the production teams. I was a arranger, kind of second, third in command. So therefore, I didn't choose the studios, but I was really enlightened when we started to use your studios.
Oh, I appreciate that. Yeah. I appreciate that. Man, I know, we did a lot of big records for you, especially the Apocalypse 91, which I recorded and mixed for you. You want to talk a little bit about that, or that little bit of the experience, or a little history of that?
Well, yeah. We had gone through a production team transition. Hank Shockley, founded and the guy, he's the president, the head commander-in-chief, he decided that we wasn't going to use Green Street anymore, because it's funny because when he and Eric chose the studios, primarily Hank, we knew we couldn't get into Chungking, which was going through a different change, and we wasn't a priority in there. And I think one day Hank had a conversation with Green Street, and we knew that Green Street was a studio that was high up on the understanding on how to look at rap records differently. And so he had conversations with them, and I think John over there and Rod Way, and they wasn't used for a while, even though they first started putting out the Run DMC records. And Hank remembered that, and we started to do productions in their Studio A room. And then all of a sudden, after a couple albums, then everybody wants to use what you're using. They're reading your liner notes too. And it got to a point where, although they built 2 rooms and their traffic got heavy, and we couldn't even book inside the studio because everybody wanted to record there. So Hank decided on a change, and the Music Palace became that change, because I was comfortable with it. I had to pretty much go and work with Eric and arrange the songs. Eric had become a New York City, Manhattan resident, and I think the change when I came back off a couple tours, that transition was going from from Eric Sadler to me beginning to work with Gary G. Wiz.
I remember
And
that.
Gary was from Freeport, and so therefore it was close for him. He wasn't really a city cat. I'm not really a city cat. And so we really got into intricate details. And then Hank felt comfortable after a while. Once Gary felt comfortable and I was comfortable using your spot. And then I began at the same time working and arranging on the Apocalypse 91 album, which started out as an EP.
Okay.
Remember, we started as an EP. I'm kind of touring at the same time. All right, the plan is in 1991 is to kind of like knock out 4 or 5 songs, a short, not even an album. And then it just grew and grew and grew and grew as me and Gary got closer. And then it got to a point where, okay, this is something. And we recorded Can't Trust It. And I think the thing at the same time, it happened, we did Apocalypse 91 after I felt confident to do the Terminator X album.
I remember that.
Valley of the Jeep Beats. And the Valley of the Jeep Beats, I primarily did after I kind of recorded Buck Wildin in here. And I recorded Buck Wildin. And so we began a relationship.
Right.
And then also, your engineers that you chose, I've become closer with. Because I'm doing the arrangement, you always got to get, close to the engineers. So Bob Fajinski was very key in our relationship.
Cool.
As a matter of fact, I contacted Bob Fajinski a couple years ago. A couple of guys, that really became close. Once you become close with your engineer and you come up with techniques, then you feel comfortable. And that's what I think Hank found out later on. I was comfortable. We had completed a Terminator X project, and you say, wow, this feels good. I really said the comfort zone for me was the proximity, and also the proximity of working closer with Gary. So the proof was after a while, and I think, I was like, well, Music Palace is all right, and I don't think Hank and Gary gave you the shot to actually mix a record, and you would ask them if you could mix.
I did. Apocalypse 91.
But then I said, listen, you can mix it. I think you mix Home, You Don't Play That.
Yeah, I did. Yeah.
And you mixed the Terminator X records, and that's when they found out, like, well, Mike can mix, and I felt confident that you can do your thing and feel whatever you wanted to feel and make it happen and knock it out. And then that kind of gave Hank and Gary confidence that you could do the mix, but also keep you on the bricks, knowing that it got to be right. So I felt good about that time period, especially, man. To me it was a breath of fresh air to record here.
I remember when I asked Gary G. Wiz, hey Gary, let me take a shot at Apocalypse. I never forget. Gary said, you, because he thought I was like the accountant of the place. He didn't realize that I engineered and mixed also, and I kept everything maintained because I was so busy those days. So I remember I did one on spec. I did the title track. I never forget. He walked in from his truck and said, "You're mixing this whole album." He really loved it. So that was the beginning of.
Yeah, you knew your board, you knew your studio, and my whole thought was like, well, if this is your place, and I think the biggest thing is like, well, let Mike do it because Mike's going to do it. It's his studio, and we probably won't get beat down with the time. You know what I'm saying? We won't get beat down with the time if you spent your time. You was like, cool, it's on the house. I'll knock this mix out. And that was very important to us. And, that was very relinquishing because studio and clock at that particular time is different from today where people are recording out on laptops and they're doing their own mastering and stuff like that. Let the pros be the pros.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Also, I work with Plotkin here.
Yes,
and, and he helped on a lot of. He helped make a metallic type of feel on the edges of Fear of a Black Planet. He made a metallic type of feel out of hip hop layering.
Yes, he was creative, very creative guy.
Plotkin was dope.
Very creative.
Animated dude.
He really was. One other thing, Chuck, which was amazing mixing with you is like you had such a sense of where all those samples really needed to be placed in the mix. And you would tell me, filter, take all the highs off this. You were such an integral part of those mixes. Had I not had you next to me, I couldn't fully realize those mixes the way they were to be born, so to speak, because you knew exactly. Okay, Mike, take all the highs off this, and
Well, I
this
learned
way-
from the best. You know, Hank is really the guy that's able to make the mix out of all of the different parts. I think my particular job, if I bring in a vocal sample, since I had to write the lyrics, I had to bring in the vocal sample. Then it was knocking it out from that point.
Yeah,
You know, so I had to know exactly, you know, what that vocal sample was going to play off of the lyrics. So.
Oh, awesome. One last question. Like, so what would you give advice to new aspiring artists looking to come up in the industry? You know, is there any, I don't know, any kind of like advice?
Yeah. Pay attention to professionals, you know, and don't make light of scholarship, because scholarship is actually somebody goes into the detail of learning what it is. So once you're looking up at a board, it's one thing that people feel that they could get it just by going on YouTube. Yeah, I think everybody needs somebody to be able to mentor them into a job.
It's so true. It's so true. You know, a lot of kids come in here as interns and they come and go like really fast, and they don't realize that working next to a Highline Pro, you can't get that on the internet.
No, you know, today people listen with their eyes. That's why we're doing this thing now. They listen with their eyes, but they definitely ain't, you know, taking it all in with sound. There's a different generations now where the sonics are missed by a lot of people that just don't know how to hear.
Totally. That they don't know how to hear. That's totally true.
Yeah, if I show you something, you ain't necessarily going to hear it first. You're going to see it.
Oh,
you know?
that's interesting.
That's why blind people, man, they'll give you the details on what they're hearing because they can't see.
That's very interesting.
And then now everything is based on what you hear when you're in the details of just sound alone, because it's what you feel. And you know, and you could knock feel out by just showing somebody that. You could play 3-card monte with them and they're going to dazzled by their eyes. So today's music, do I think it's better or worse? They listen with their eyes. So if you don't show them what they're hearing, they're going to miss a lot. And you could get duped in regular life as well as a sound.
That's a very strong point, especially today. You don't put out a video, you have less of a chance of making noise, right?
Yeah, you know, it's like eventually, like all sound will become de-emphasized when people have sight. You know, you got LASIKs for sight. You don't have LASIKs for hearing.
Excellent wisdom. Excellent wisdom. Chuck, thanks so much, man. It's awesome, man. Kicking it again. That's
Yeah,
some
man.
excellent wisdom.
Well, I'll try to give it to you as I got it.